Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Greetings, all.
Alan Seiler,
Zindi!
Elaine Sweatman,
Hi.
and Matt Sweatman,
Hello.
and Veronica Dashel.
You almost left me out.
There's too many names.
I was wondering for a minute there. I said, "Oh, saving."
Because you went Matt Sweatman. I'm like, oh,
I did a little mental
part of the crew
inventory.
now.
Yeah,
That's
check,
cute.
check.
And,
Oh crap!
Wow.
Welcome
Elaine
back,
stole my
everybody.
high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're back tonight. We're going to be talking about Star Trek Enterprise Season 3. But first, we got a little bit of news this week.
Boy, we have got some news this week. The big story from this week is that Michelle Yeoh is now the first Asian American actor ever to be nominated for Best Actor Oscar.
Wow.
Amazing. Isn't that
Yeah,
unbelievable? She was
absolutely.
nominated for her performance in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yeah.
As she should be. Because
As she should be, right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that movie itself got, I think, a total of 11 nominations
Mhm.
in different categories. So that's
That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that she's getting the recognition finally that she deserves.
Yes.
Right.
And I mean, same for Ke Kwan, because I mean, I've
Yes.
loved him since I was both of the movies that he was a kid actor in. I was a kid watching at the same time. So I was like, I love that he's getting the accolades as well. And
Yeah.
how great for both of them, and for the Asian American community in general.
Right. Absolutely. And there's one other thing there's actually 4 things. So here's number 3. The brand new final trailer for Picard Season 3 is just days away. It's going to be released January 29th during the AFC Championship game on CBS.
Yes.
There's
I was
also
so confused during that commercial when they were showing, and then they were showing clips of football, and I couldn't see people's faces. So I was like, are they playing football in Star Trek? What's going on?
oh, I know.
I remember when sci-fi went big on wrestling, so I'm used to that sort of thing. I'm just waiting for the start.
Exactly. And to tie in with that, there's also a big Terry Metalis interview in the new SFX magazine issue, in which he talks a lot, well, without giving anything away really, about Season 3. He talks about how the 3 main villains are going to work, the nature of the big event that sets the stage for Season 3, and he hints at the possible fate of the TNG characters beyond this season.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
So look for that. There's some big news for fans of Eagle Moss, which is the company that has been for like a long time producing all kinds of different Star Trek and other properties. They did a whole line of ships, they did all kinds of stuff, and they went under last year.
Yeah.
Well, product lines from Eagle Moss are now being resurrected by 2 different brands. The Build the Enterprise D program is being taken over by De Agostini, which is an Italian company, through their fan home. What the?
Excuse
Through
me.
their fan
was
home
me.
brand. I know. Through their fan home brand, which has just officially relaunched that program. And later this year, models from the popular line of Hero Collector Star Trek starships will be going on sale again through Heathside's Master Replicas brand. And Eagle Moss's former head of licensed products, Ben Robinson, is working as a consultant with both of those companies.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Right.
It's ironic because this is one of these examples of bad timing. I literally last year was just about to subscribe to Eagle Moss when I start reading about, hey, they're going to go under.
Heath, that would have kept them afloat.
Right. I don't know.
Thanks a lot from all of us.
I bought my very first Eagle Moss model, and like the next week it was like, and now Eagle Moss is closed. I was like,
So Keith, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
Chuck tried.
Okay.
And then I've got one final thing, and that is Star Trek Online has launched its latest season, Refractions, on PC on January 24th, 2 days ago, with new consoles coming at a later date. With the new update, players will be able to experience the conclusion of the ongoing Terran Gambit storyline. The new season features the return of Will Wheaton, from Star Trek Next Generation, voicing Terran Emperor Wesley Crusher, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Chase Masterson as Terran Admiral Lita. And for the first time, Gates McFadden makes her debut. She lends her voice as Terran Dr. Beverly Crusher. And there is a trailer available to so you'll know what the storyline is. And it sounds like she and her son are on opposite sides.
That does
You
sound like
try and take him down.
Okay.
Could be good.
Awesome.
And that's the news.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break to promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. And then when we come back, we'll be talking about Star Trek Enterprise Season 3. So stay right there. Unless you're watching live, in which case we're going to continue on and talk about Star Trek Enterprise Season 3. And we're joined tonight by Matt and Elaine Sweatman again. We're returning
Hey,
champions.
Matt and Elaine.
Hello.
Hey,
Welcome back, guys.
Yes, we never left. We've been sitting in front of our computers all week waiting to record.
That's hilarious.
I believe it.
Right.
And now you guys recently went through and just like sort of, marathon through Enterprise Season 3.
Enterprise.
Enterprise.
Yeah.
What did I say?
They
Yes.
started. Well, they've done the whole series, not
Oh,
just
yeah,
season
yeah.
3.
Oh, I
That's
got
what I
you.
meant.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're in season 4 now, but
Mm-hmm.
Right.
not
Well,
quite.
had you seen Season 3 before?
No, I've not seen any of these before.
Okay.
Really?
So this has all been a first
Yeah.
time watch for you.
Yeah.
I had seen them the first half of the season when it aired, but I had forgotten so much about it. It was like I hadn't seen it before.
Okay.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's kind of how I am with Enterprise as well. Like I was intermittent at that point in Enterprise Season 3. And it's not a show I revisit a whole lot because, like I said before on the show, I wasn't a big fan. And I quit watching Enterprise while it was on, and I would come back and try one out and that sort of thing. So for a lot of these episodes, I hadn't seen in 20 years. So it was a pretty fresh watch for me as well.
Mhm.
So am I the only one who watched it in first run?
No, man, I did.
Okay, I thought it was you.
No, I did.
Yeah. It was so wild watching it. It was so different in so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
ways from what I'd seen before.
Yeah, totally.
I was going to say I wasn't aware of it, but no, I was, because I remember hearing that Scott Bakula was going to be in it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but I never did watch any of it. So.
Yeah. So it's interesting because landing Scott Bakula they got a lot of press out of that.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of they did a real big press push on the launch of Enterprise, and the first episode got like 12 million viewers, which
Mhm.
was
yeah.
monstrous for a Trek show at that time. Now
Yeah.
that tapered off, a pretty good bit.
Mhm.
Precipitously,
I
yeah.
think the next week was like 1.2 million or something.
No, it wasn't that bad.
I
But it
remember
was
reading.
it was
So I-
it was 3 or 4 million
Yeah.
within a
Yeah.
week or two.
Okay.
It was pretty bad.
And the following week, they had negative 16 million.
They had two, Keith and Alan.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
And me,
So-
I was watching with the first season.
Yeah,
so.
I was too.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so having watched, especially for Elaine, having watched Enterprise for the first time from the first episode on,
Mhm.
you've hit the beginning of season 3.
Mhm.
So what's your impression of Enterprise up to that point?
Like the show as a whole,
The show as a whole.
I was enjoying it. I mean, there was, like with any show, there were some episodes that were kind of like, eh. But the one big thing that bothered me with the beginning of season 3, and I've commented on this several times, is the theme song. Why did you change it? I had just gotten used to it and started to like it, and then
Yeah.
you made it some pop something in a season that was supposed to be serious.
I mean, the
Right.
tempo
And it made
they
no
kind of
sense.
added. Yeah.
it was just weird. I'm like, I don't
It
like
is.
this. I don't like this. I don't like.
It
Take it back.
made
Change
it made
back.
no sense.
No.
That
Yeah.
they basically took Russell Watson's vocal. They didn't change anything but that, and they just put a new backing track to it. But the
Mhm.
new backing track feels jauntier, and it feels lighter, and
Yeah.
it feels
Yeah.
a little more fun. As
And I think
as-
there's a background singer somewhere in there too that's echoing his vocals, or
Well,
that's what it sounds like.
Right, but they do this. They make that change at a time when Florida is being obliterated from the face of the globe.
My
Now,
home state has disappeared.
Now, I grew up there, so I celebrated too, but kidding. I felt bad for all the alligators.
Yeah, you'd expect for if they were going to change the theme tune for the Xindi arc, a little more militaristic, a little more even something James Horner-ish would work, you know, something like, you know, Star Trek 6 theme kind of a thing.
Well, like they did with DS9 going into season 4 when they're going into the war arc, and they changed the theme song to make it more urgent, to make it more a little bit more militaristic, to give it that pulse that it didn't have before, and it fit.
Yeah.
I didn't notice when DS9 theme song changed.
That's true.
And I'm pretty sure I didn't notice when the Enterprise theme song changed when we were watching it.
Oh, that was the first thing. As soon as it went to it, I was like, oh, no. What did they do to no?
Yeah.
And for a very, very long time, I thought all of the Star Trek theme songs were the same.
Okay.
Oh, dear Lord.
Jerry Goldsmith did them all.
You see what I'm working with over here.
The very first time I was like, hey, this is a different song. Just goes like, yes.
Well, let's start with the beginning of the Xindi arc with the attack on Earth.
Yeah, baby.
I mean, my first thought, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
I mean, if you're okay, assuming that you're going to build a death ray to destroy the Earth, why would you test the miniature death ray on the Earth?
Yeah,
and let them know that they're gonna, and then they're gonna come looking for you. Out of all the places to test your little death ray,
I have seen people try to answer that online because I raised that question too, and it literally is the most glaring error in the entire series. And then they've said some stuff about, well, you know, something like the unique composition of the Earth and blah blah blah. That's not true. It's really, like you said, it's literally a death ray. And they could have experimented on an asteroid or some planet anywhere. And you're right. And the truth is, they never would have known.
And they did.
Right. They did, but they still had to send a prototype over to Earth
to tip off Earth.
Now, did they in the dialogue specifically say that was a test run and not a failed first attempt to destroy the Earth?
Yeah,
it was a test run because it didn't have the power to destroy the Earth, which is why it carved that path from Florida all the way down to South America, right?
Well, Florida to Cuba, I think.
Cuba,
which also is a tactically, I mean, as an area to attack, it's a lot of water in there with no planes.
Right.
You know, if you're gonna if you're trying to kill humans, but I mean the whole thing. I mean, that's never. I mean, forgetting the fact that you can just hurtle. I mean, a sufficiently sized rock at the Earth to render it uninhabitable. You don't have to have a death ray. I just the whole death ray thing, it just throws me.
So basically, season 3 is ruined in the first 30 seconds.
That was in the season 2 finale.
Season is invalidated. No, I know.
Yeah, it is true, isn't it, that this whole thing is literally an allegory for 9/11, correct?
Yeah,
it was all inspired by the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in the United States at that time.
Yeah, and then the ensuing war on terror and invasion of Iraq. I mean, and there's a lot of those themes are explored in the show in one way or another.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's probably something that would have, I don't want to say made more sense, but if I had been watching it back when it first aired,
right,
I may have made that connection a little bit more than
Yeah.
watching it 20 years later and not really putting those pieces together because I'm not watching it with in that current event
Sure.
mind frame.
Yeah,
So,
it was
of course.
20 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, so that's not fresh on my mind thinking, oh, I see what they're doing here. Okay, we're going to go after the people in this nebula area, the expanse, and we don't know why they're doing this. Okay.
Right. Yeah, at the time, it was very apparent that was what they were doing because it was current news. But I mean, character-wise, I think the attack works, especially heightening the urgency of the show, and for a character perspective, for Trip losing his sister in the attack.
Right.
Oh
yeah. Well, an interview Keith had shared with John Billingsley pointed something out which I didn't realize. Manny Cotto was brought in this season.
That is correct.
And he had worked on 24, so I can see his fingerprint all over this season story arc.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So here's another thing. This is going right into the beginning of episode 1. So the attack on Earth makes no sense because why advertise that you're going to attack Earth later? So they prep the ship, and they're going to sail off to the Expanse, and they've been sailing off for like 6 weeks, right? Hoshi comes into the mess hall and introduces herself to the Makos. They've been on this shit for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
How have they possibly? I mean, and they have to eat food. How have these people not met the Makos before now?
Yes.
I mean, I know that that's a mechanism to introduce the Makos to the audience,
right?
But you have just said that we're 6 weeks into our mission, and we're not even close to the Expanse yet.
And this isn't the Enterprise D. There's something like 85 people on Enterprise.
Right.
You know, it's not 1,000 people where you can get lost in the corridor.
Get lost in a crowd.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought when you talked about only 85 crew members plus whatever the Makos are, when they talk about 20 some odd people having been killed, that's a sizable chunk. That has to affect the operations of your ship, and they can't easily replenish personnel because they're in the Expanse.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I will tell you.
Go ahead.
Alan, mentioning the Makos, I think, and we'll get into this, the season 3 of this show is divisive and controversial for a lot of people. Some of it has to do with, and we'll get into this again, I've often posited the question, which captain violated the spirits and the principles of what would become Starfleet protocols worse? You know, Cisco in the Pale Moonlight, or Archer, what he does in the series. But at the same time, since this is not yet Gene Roddenberry's perfect future of TNG, so I think they get a little leeway in being more quote unquote human than maybe perhaps Picard and them with, because there are some things that happen in this season that are amazing, and I actually like the inclusion of the Makos, because I've always been someone, as much as I love the optimism and the positivity of Gene Roddenberry, I also know that the truth is you got to protect yourself. Right. And the Makos are something that shouldn't have been there because Earth was attacked. They just made sense. And I love everything about the Makos. I love how they look. I love their weapons. I love how they move. I mean, they are quite amazing. I'm a huge fan of the series Star Blazers / Space Battleship Yamato. And they had brought on literally Space Marines, which, gosh, and even things like James Cameron's Alien movies, you had literally Space Marines. And the Makos are the closest to Space Marines. And I thought they were a great addition to the show.
Yeah, I agree. My only problem was that they didn't really do much with individual characters except for Major Hayes. Right. He's the only one that really had any kind of presence on the show, and the underlings sort of were bit players who just they hired up for each episode. So in the first episode, they introduced this guy who was from Duluth. And he's got this sweet little Southern accent, and Hoshi's having a good time talking to him and everything. And then you never see him again.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if she hangs out in Hoshi's circle, she's not going to get a whole lot of screen time on this show. So
that's true.
Now, Matt.
He's not wrong.
It could have been worse. He could have come out with Mayweather. So that would have been worse.
Thank you.
So it does seem like there should have been a contingent of Makos on the ship from the beginning, on the Earth's first ship going into deep space, and maybe you wouldn't have had all those scenes of Archer losing fistfights and things like that. But I mean, interesting at this point though, it does. I mean, it's something I don't think they explored as much as I would have liked on the show. But introducing them now, you've got these, West Point military guys, but they're not experienced with dealing with space things. And I would love to have seen more of that.
That is a good point.
Well, they did it a little bit in the hatchery episode, but I mean, these guys, they're way more competent from a tactical point of view than our guys are. I mean, that's just to me obvious. Sorry, Reed, but that's true.
Absolutely.
Thank you for bringing up Reed, because they keep making attempts to make him an interesting character, and it fails every damn time. And this whole competitive thing between him and Major Hayes was so uninteresting.
Yeah,
he just came.
Oh my god.
Yeah, well, and they would do that storyline with Odo from time to time, where Eddington or another Starfleet guy, and Odo's. But I never felt like that. Like Eddington should have replaced Odo, but I felt like Major Hayes really should have replaced Reed. I think that he was way more competent,
100%,
and more likable.
Yeah.
And also,
Right.
if you look at, to your point, if you look at the reality of what they're doing, Reed is not just responsible for security in terms of a group of men and women. He's also responsible for ship security. That includes, phased weapons, the phasers, missiles, shields, and so forth, or shielding because they have hull plating.
Mhm.
So yeah, you kind of think he should be really. Reed should be the guy who sits in staff meetings with the captain and discusses security. And then in the same room, there should be like one person in charge of the ship security, phasers, weapons, shielding, and then another guy, which would be Hayes, talking about the physical security team.
Mhm.
So I agree, because it's kind of weird to see Reed going from programming missiles or photon or torpedoes to then basically getting pissed because Reed and his team are better shots with those phase rifles than he is. And like you said,
Right.
of course they are.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
Worf would have done the same thing. Worf fired the torpedoes and also led,
Yes.
away missions.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or was security on away missions,
Mhm.
But they had that scene where where Hayes went over Reed's head to Archer
Yeah.
Mhm.
and insisted that the senior staff needed more weapons training, and Reed's all pissy about it. And then Reed actually like flunked when he tried to do it. Like, well,
Right.
you do, man. Like, listen to the Marine guy. You're going into a
Yeah.
combat situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I thought they should have delineated their, not the right word, their responsibilities more. Like Reed was responsible for the on the ship for like ship to ship battles on
Exactly.
even on ship, and then the Marines are responsible for any excursions, any away missions, for the security there. That was sort of what they were trained for.
Exactly. That's what I felt too.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's funny. I did not expect that we'd be talking about the Makos so much. Isn't it amazing? It's something everybody seems to like.
But it's a cool addition to the show. It's something that's unique to Enterprise. And then when you see it, you're like, wait a minute, why didn't every show have this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why weren't there specialists? I mean, yes, you have your security team, but they always let aliens invade the ship and all this other kind of nonsense. You should have a more specialized, trained attack group, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
You should have your Navy SEALs on there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'd never really thought about it until I saw him on Enterprise, and I'm like, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, question, Matt and Elaine, as you get into this, what is obviously going to become was going to become an epic, and I don't know how I forget how familiar you guys who are with Deep Space Nine, but something that's obviously going to become a long arc, an arc of battles and so forth. What did y'all think about it? Were you interested in it? Were you excited where this might go when you first got into this whole Xindi arc?
You can go first, Matt.
I was going to let you answer, but yeah, I really thought it brought focus to the show. The first two seasons, other than like once in a blue moon, they would mention the temporal Cold War.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, there was very little focus to what they were doing. And instantly, with the last episode of the second season and that attack by the Xindi, then that's what the focus of the show became for that full season.
Yes.
And even so it helped bring lesser episodes because there was still something in each episode to tie into the overall arc. You couldn't skip an episode in the third season like you could in the first two seasons.
Right.
So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll agree with that. Yeah.
So y'all are actually excited about this coming up at the time.
Yes. Plus, I were getting episodes that I was less familiar with too, so I was excited about that aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I will say that it's always fun to watch a Star Trek episode, especially a classic Star Trek episode that you've not seen,
Yes.
or that you don't remember. Like, I don't know what exactly is going to happen next. This is kind of fun.
Right.
Well, it was nice to see different aliens. Like, it was not Klingons and it was not Vulcan. Other than T'Pol, but it was new ones I had not ever seen before.
Right.
Especially, so that was interesting to see this new set of out there people.
Out there people.
Well, Elaine, what did you think of the Xindi?
Which one?
Right.
All of them.
Yes.
All of them. The reptilians. Is that the one I was really impressed with their makeup and their especially the lead, the main guy. I was just really impressed with. And even the lesser ones, it looked like they did not, my cats are fighting over here. Did not,
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I like the Zindi, the reptilians. A little Galaxy Quests though. They're a little. They remind me of the
Yeah.
Galaxy Quest bad, especially when at the end when they're in the big spinny thing on the ship and destroy the Earth. You know,
Right.
Well, maybe that's more acting than makeup and all of that. I
Yeah.
did like the I can't remember the whale, the water one.
Aquatics.
The
aquatic.
Aquatics.
Aquatics.
Yeah. I
You
liked
can just
them.
say
I wanted
whales.
to see more. I wanted to see more of them. I liked them. They
Yeah,
were
me
very
too.
wise and
Yes.
Thoughtful to a fault.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Incredible ships. I mean, just one of the most beautiful ships I've ever seen in Star Trek was the aquatic ship.
Yeah. I
Just
wanted
elegant.
more of them and to learn more about them and how they came into being part of the
Yes.
Zindi and everything. I liked them a lot.
Speaking of
really-
the aquatic ships, I just want to bring up, I love the way when they had the battle and they would penetrate the water areas of the ship and you see the water come out. It was a
Yes.
very cool effect.
Yes,
Even
I
though
agree.
CG, but I love that. I
Yeah.
love it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good use of the CG of the time. I mean,
Yes.
there's some elements of the season I didn't think the CG was particularly well used or needed, but as far as like bringing the aquatics and their ships to life, I thought that worked out really well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I grew to really like Dagra over the course of the season.
Uh-huh.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
I thought he was effective, especially. I mean, really, the turning point for him was when they kidnapped him and
Yeah.
Mhm.
and tricked
Mhm.
him. You know,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's what you need. Like, I mean, when you think of the Dominion, you think of like Wayun, you know, and
Mhm.
you think of the founder, and you know what I mean. Like, you need the characters that you can grab onto. And I did think they took a little long into the season before I really felt invested in any of the Zindi themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I think that they were trying to keep them as others. They were,
Right.
you know, they weren't really, because like on DS9, you have you have some scenes in Enterprise where it's all the aliens, it's all
Right.
the enemy. But you have in DS9, you have like whole scenes that are devoted to these characters, like whole halves of an episode that are carried by the supporting characters, by the adversarial characters, and you don't really see that in this. And I would
Mhm.
really like to have known more. I mean, we get a little bit of the history and the culture of the Zindi, but I would like to have known more.
Mhm.
You know, I just think we needed to know more about them.
It almost
Right.
seemed like there was one episode and one scene where they were talking about the avians and how they're now extinct.
Right.
We almost learned more about them, and they're not even Zindi anymore. They're extinct than we
Right.
did the rest of them.
I really would like to have seen avians in a flashback or in when
Mhm.
someone is recounting the story of, like, you know, my grandfather would tell me
Mhm.
stories about how there were so numerous that they blotted out the sun, you know, when they flew in the sky. I would love to have seen some of those scenes depicted, you know. All
Right.
we got was like a cow skull where they told us
Mhm.
this is the skull of a Zindi bird, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did like that though. I think it's them having sort of the shared sort of myth of the avians.
Yes.
I thought was effective, and when they were at the former avian base or whatever it
Right.
was, you know, there at the end, I thought it was effective. I thought it gives sort of a history and mythology to the Zindi. I thought that was kind of cool.
I did love that at the end when they were having like the meetings with Archer and everything, and they need neutral territory. They go to one of the abandoned aviaries.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
was really,
Right.
really cool. I
Right.
wish that they had sort of, I mean, they were great sets. I wish they had been a little more different, you
Mm.
know, because,
Yeah.
you know, when you're in it, it just kind of seems like a conference room and some hallways. I wish that it
I
had
feel like
seemed
avians, there should have been like perches or something.
right.
Yes.
Exactly
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Something different like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can
One
see
thing we talked about the different species of the Zindi and the reptilian. One thing that I've noticed, it's not just Star Trek, this is an absolute human prejudice because we haven't seen any other species but ourselves. But I don't think I've ever seen a science fiction property anywhere where beings descended from reptiles aren't evil
Right.
or just mean. And it's as if, you know, it's as if if you think about it, basically we're saying, well, you got snakes and you got
Mhm.
iguana and you got Komodo dragons, you got crocodiles and alligators,
Right.
Mhm.
and then they'll basically evolve into mean, intelligent, violent creatures. And I sometimes think they don't have to become that way anymore. We're violent species, but like as Kirk said, we don't have to be all the time. And so,
Yeah.
and that way, the reptilians come off as just a little cliched because reptilians are always evil in science fiction.
Exactly. And that's one of the points that I made when we did our Zindi episode. I wish that they had kind of flipped that stereotype on its head to where the bug people and the lizard people were the good guys, and the people and the sloth people were the bad guys.
Right.
Now, you can't do that because one of your good guys would be a completely CGI character, and you can't spend the money to have them on screen all the time. And the other one is such a heavy prosthetic makeup.
Right.
You have to do the sloth people and the people as your good guys because they work on screen. But it's such a shame that is the way it had to be, because having the good guys be the ones that you don't expect to be the good guys would have been so effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good guys.
It also seems so strange to me that 5 different intelligent species all evolved on the same planet, and they didn't try and wipe out each other or succeed.
Oh, they did.
Wiping out each other. I mean, yes. Okay, so they succeeded in wiping out the avians.
Right. Well, they tried, and I think losing the avians, I think, was what caused them to.
But how did they get to a point where they were that intelligent that they could wipe out another entire species before they wiped out another entire species? where there were 6 of them. 5?
Well, because they all like, I guess, evolved intelligently at the same pace, so they were always sort of like equal and opposite in force, maybe, or in ability, or so if somebody did try something, the other ones think of a way to counter it.
And it could be that their habitats are so like you wouldn't expect aquatics to run across the sloth people, as you call them, right? They wouldn't have a lot of territorial disputes, and that's exactly like to be different parts of the planet.
Sure. And the bugs would be underground, and so they could
presumably, or at high altitudes. Like there'd
be plenty of room if you think about Earth. Like all the different animals tend to live somewhat cohesively in their different atmospheres, so they could do that as well.
Well, the ocean life is very segregated from us, so it would make sense if there was an intelligent life in the oceans. We would not have a whole lot.
That one I bought.
Yeah,
that's true.
But I do think that getting to the point where they're at now and having a council of representatives from each of the 5 intelligent races is a really cool concept.
Yeah.
It's a really, really cool idea. So, I mean, that to me is the strength of season 3 is developing that idea of having a race that is 5 separate species that have all developed, in concert with each other. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, because the point you're making, I think it's really awesome, because they're a united group of people, even though they're getting ready to do a horrible thing, which is complete genocide of a species. But they are so different, but they're united.
Right.
And that is amazing. And then you see people like the Vulcans and the Andorians, who ostensibly look way more alike than the Zindi species do, and they can't stand each other.
Right.
And I think that's a good point about that. I have a question. Is something that always troubled me, even though they make it work because they blend it into the fabric of the show in terms of creating what ultimately is the Federation. And I think Enterprise, in the main, does an incredibly good job of showing us going out into space and helping tie these other species together. You're talking about unity, Alan, as we, at the end of the series, the Vulcans and the humans and the Andorians and the Tellarites are together. Something that troubled me about this entire season is the fact that the Vulcans just kind of stood back. It was so weird to me that the Vulcans didn't invest heavily in helping save Earth, because at some point in time they knew that Earth was fighting for the life of the entire species and the planet. It was weird how aloof they seemed to be. I was really expecting the Vulcans to, I don't know, send a fleet and help out. They really didn't. That was strange to me. And I couldn't figure out why the Vulcans were acting like that. You would have thought they said, wow, there's a species out there that even we don't know much about, and they're trying to destroy your entire planet. We'll help you out. So why were they like that?
Well, they had sent ships into the Expanse. And they all went nutso zombie. So I don't think that, I think they were done with trying to penetrate the Expanse. I think that they said, we can't, this is not something that we can do.
But even on Earth and around Earth, you don't get the impression that the Vulcans like, what can we do to help you? They still seem to be kind of like, you little spoiled brat people. You're on your own.
That's totally the tone that we've had from day one on Enterprise. So I never thought of it being anything other than in character for them.
Yeah.
Even on the original series, the Vulcans that we meet are consistently jerks.
Well, in the 4th season, there is a story arc which deals with some of that political machinations. I don't know if you've gotten there yet, Chuck, but yeah.
I've seen all of season 4 before.
I have not.
Yeah, she has not.
I was like, let's watch season 4, and he's like, let's watch something.
I need a break.
Original series.
We're keeping on going.
I know.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about some individual episodes.
Yes.
I mean, they did a good job, I think, of mixing in the occasional, like, the cowboy episode, or things like that. But for the most part, they pretty much stuck with the Xindi plot. At least tied it into most of the episodes.
Yes.
Yeah, even when they went back to present day Detroit, they still tied it into the Xindi storyline.
Were there any individual episodes that jumped out at anybody that you felt was
when the captain went psycho and was like prioritizing the Xindi bug babies over the
that's
memorable.
And the Makos were like, we're just gonna follow the orders of the captain, even though he's prioritizing these little bugs that we're going to eventually kill when they grow up.
Yeah, see, I had a totally different perspective on that episode. Because, like, for me, like Archer, every time there's an ethical dilemma, I feel like Archer's on the wrong side of it consistently throughout the series.
Right.
We're still seeing that in the 4th season, yes.
Yeah, and in this case, there was these hatchlings from the Xindi, and at first when he was like, we can't just abandon them to die.
Yeah.
Even if it jeopardizes our mission. I was like, yeah, he's becoming a Star Trek captain. You got to do the right thing. And everyone else in the ship is like, wow, the captain's making ethically responsible decision. Something's wrong with him. And they were right.
He is under the influence of their
right.
And
it went that way. But I felt like it would have been a much more interesting story if there was no alien influence. If it was just the crew has to decide and maybe don't agree, like, should we jeopardize our mission or should we let these, however many infants die?
Exactly.
It still would have been nice if he had showered a few more times in that episode. He was looking really crusty at times in that episode.
That's true. That's true.
Wow.
Charles, I see what you're saying, though. It's like the one episode where, I forget the episode. Remember the one episode where they were basically coming up on what was a little monitoring station, and they had to decide to kill the people on that station for the mission, and it was basically straight up. Well, there's no other way to say it. It was straight up murder, and I don't know. See, murder has an ethical connotation, but it was a straight up of killing somebody. Remember, there was a little struggle with that from all this. Do we do this? Because basically you just killed some people who literally had done nothing to you, but it's that or the Earth.
Yeah. Or when they, stole Casey Biggs' warp drive assembly and left him stranded for 3 years. He's going to die. They've hammered it for a whole season that this place is full of pirates and anomalies and things. There's no way to get it out.
Exactly.
Yep. And they just ripped it off and left him to die.
Yeah.
Well, they gave him some food, but then even like in season 4, did they mention, hey, we went back and saved Casey Biggs and brought him the components he needed and said sorry? No,
they should have forgotten.
They just flew off.
Yeah, because I think it could be argued that is. I was saying earlier about the conversation. I think it can be argued that Archer has committed the most heinous act of all starship captains in all Star Trek series, because that was the act of piracy.
Yeah. Okay. Or when he tortured that guy, or when he. Or when he harvested that Sim's brain to save Trip. It's full of them.
I'm sorry, but he is in a position where he feels like the entire fate of Earth is on his shoulders.
Yeah.
He's out there by himself. There's no, you're basically cut off from Starfleet. There's no support. You have to do the job. If I don't do this job, Earth is going to get blown up. There comes a point where you're going to do whatever you have to do.
Well, maybe you do the right thing.
Well,
it's like Picard said, if we're going to be damned, let's be damned for what we really are. Sure. Or like the Vulcans who are ready to die for their principles, but Archer doesn't have principles that he's willing to die for. He's going to do whatever it takes to save the Earth. And I think that ties in with, it's basically just supporting the Bush policies after 9/11. It's American patriotism. It's supporting the war in Iraq. It's supporting waterboarding. It's supporting the war on terror. And I think that's not the way Star Trek should have gone in that case.
Interesting.
And I agree with you. And I think that I think that that's exactly why they took Archer down that path, because they wanted to show the things that we were doing at the time that were controversial and incredibly divisive in this country. The fact that they used the captain to do it is I think kind of bold, because Roddenberry, had he been alive and been showrunner or over the show, would never let that happen even then. No. So I agree that it's a bold move that they would do something like that. I will say, and there will be no spoilers here, but what I do find interesting is jumping to the aftermath, season 4 and stuff. One good thing, at least, about this is there is some self-reflection on Archer's part. There is some knowledge of I became a monster. The whole thing about becoming the thing you hate. But I got to say, of all the things I've seen, and whenever you talk about a Starfleet officer going too far, pretty much the person that comes up is Sisko within the Pale Moonlight, and also when he's chasing Commander Eddington, where he basically is going to destroy an entire planet's biosphere. But I think the piracy and the torture that Archer does is probably the worst I've ever seen, and because it also smacks of even more desperation in some ways.
Well, he was desperate.
Yeah, but again, as you say, I'm like, the Earth or your morals? What would we do? The Earth or your morals?
Yeah,
right.
That's a tough one.
If I was a Earth citizen of the 22nd century, I would be damn glad that Archer had done those things and saved the planet, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Right, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to those highlight episodes. I feel like the season started out well, and I feel like it kind of like there was some uninteresting episodes where they're like figuring out the anomalies, and they're finding this regime lady and whatever. And that kind of goes up until episode 7, the shipment, where they really start to get into the whole like Xindi operation. They're infiltrating a place where part of the weapon is being built. And I feel like that episode really is where the season kind of starts to take off. And then immediately the week after that, Twilight, I think, is a phenomenal episode.
Yeah, Twilight,
absolutely.
I agree. Twilight is one of those episodes that, thanks to Memento and stuff, is a familiar Starfleet science fiction theme, but done so well that it is an incredibly good episode. I agree.
Yeah.
I love it about it. I love the fact that the Paul is highly indicated as pretty much having fallen in love with Archer. Having kind of taken care of him. And I love the fact that you have this ragtag fleet, to quote Battlestar Galactica, of humans, and the Xindi are still chasing them, because there's like, they can't even let one Xindi be human left behind. And then, boy, they determined and focused. And boy, I started to say the founders, the sphere builders, really programmed them.
The Guardians, I think they were called, weren't they?
Is that what they called them?
The Guardians, I think.
Yeah, I think Archer's crew called them the sphere builders because that's all they knew. But they look like the founders from the Deep Space Nine.
They did look like the founders.
Yeah. So I feel like, and I love this season. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love this season. But I feel like they tried to get a little too esoteric with it, with all the sphere builder thing and the mysterious person and bringing Daniels back into it and all that stuff. I just feel like maybe they felt like they had to do that to stretch this out over 24 episodes or whatever it was. But I just feel like that sort of like watered down the concept a bit. It was almost like toward the end, it wasn't the Xindi doing this stuff, because the Xindi are being manipulated to do this stuff by this amorphous figure.
Well, that's kind of tying in with the themes Enterprise had the first 2 seasons as well.
Right.
Only it's not Future Guy. I don't know what happened to Future Guy, but he wasn't in this.
Yeah, and I felt like after having Future Guy, this was just too similar.
Right.
Yeah.
And that all comes from the unfortunate fact that when this series was greenlit, that the entire temporal Cold War and everything around it was something that the network forced on Berman and Braga. They didn't want to do the temporal Cold War. They didn't want to do the Future Guy stuff. The network said, you better do this. And so they still kept incorporated, because I agree with you. I didn't find that Daniels and all that stuff all that interesting, honestly.
Yeah. And I do think that the needing it to be 24 or whatever episodes does hurt this season. I feel like you could have tightened this thing up considerably. But that wasn't their choice. That's how television was made at that time.
Exactly. Yeah. So who else has some standout episodes?
What was the one where they had to go through it wasn't a wormhole exactly, but they encountered the Enterprise that had gone back in time. Yeah, and they had the generation ship with the future generations on the Enterprise. That was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that one is like that one's number 21. So that one's 4 from the end.
Yeah.
I like the actor who played Trip and T'Pol's son.
Yeah,
I thought he was good, and I thought that. I mean, I just like that sort of sci-fi story anyway. It's kind of Children of Time, but a little more immediate because he's one generation removed from them, even though he's 117 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, it's an easy answer, but this is a season that has the famous Vulcan zombie episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That happened to come out like Halloween week.
Yeah.
I did like
a good show.
Yeah, I did like the one where they just showed up at that like Xindi scientist's house, and it felt very domestic and just like, yeah, we're from space and you're trying to destroy our planet. What's up? And he's like,
Oh,
what's
yeah.
going on?
Really?
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Charles, you mentioned one earlier. I don't really love, even though it is one of the, I would say without a doubt, one of the top 5 Enterprise episodes discussed by people all the time that they love. I don't love the one where they created Sim.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The reason I don't love it is because in this case, for me, it feels okay. In science fiction, you got to let them kind of contrive a plot so that they can discuss it, right? I mean, that's what you have to let them do. It's kind of like we were saying, the whole Xindi arc, the start of it makes no sense. But the thing with Sim, to me, becomes so obvious. It's kind of like, oh, guess what? I happen to have this thing that can create a clone of a human, and it'll be okay because blah, blah, blah. Then, oh, guess what? We're going to have to kill it. It almost felt like, it's almost like they sat down and said, we need to do a really controversial show that's just going to really tug at the moralities. And I can see them steering the show to the moral quandaries. That one troubles me, I think, almost more than Archer being a pirate, because they created a being literally to save another being. I have a huge problem with that episode. And because what he did, I don't think he should have done. I don't know if McCoy or Crusher would have done that. But we also know what I think is cool is I think Phlox has slightly more flexible medical ethics than some of our other doctors.
Just not human.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
They felt like they needed a Tuvix.
Right.
We have to have a Tuvix.
Right.
Well, it created a teaser that Elaine was not happy with when they showed Tucker's body apparently being a funeral. Elaine was not happy with the beginning of that one.
Yeah, that was
Really.
That was a distressing time for all of us.
Did y'all like that episode with the whole trip calling Elaine and Matt? What did y'all think about that episode?
I actually liked it. I kind of wish that T'Pol had kept her interest in the sim and not in the real Trip. I have a problem with the whole Trip T'Pol thing, but
interesting.
The sim came in and said, I have feelings for you, but I don't know if it's my feelings or if it's Trip's feelings, and so I don't know what to do with this. And so he should have just kept his mouth shut, so then when he's gone, then there can still be that weird whatever going on between Trip and T'Pol.
He's like a week old. Cut him some slack.
Interesting.
Well, what do we think about the Trip and T'Pol relationship generally in the way it was handled? Because that's a big part of the series, of the season.
Yeah.
It felt a little gratuitous to me. I mean, they had like the 2 sexiest characters on the show, and so they had to show them getting it on for whatever.
It wasn't as bad as the decontamination shower scene, though. Those are gross. My God.
Exactly. And
the skin of Max rub downs.
And I remember making that comment when you guys were doing your watch through and you were doing your live booking, as you're watching that episode. And I was like, at least if they're going to do that, at least in this one, it makes story sense.
Right.
Trip is having nightmares. Trip can't sleep. She has the ability to like do neuropressure, whatever. It makes sense. That whole like decontamination thing where they slather each other with body oil and stuff is so unnecessarily gratuitous.
Right.
This at least had a story purpose to it.
Right.
I'm not saying it wasn't gratuitous. I'm just saying
Well, and you could conceivably see if you're that intimate, even though it's not romantic intimate to start with, that you could see how they would develop feelings for each other, because that's what can happen if you keep touching each other like that.
Of course, you can see that because look at them.
I know.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I agree with y'all, because what happened is you can be sexy, but every time they inserted that kind of sexuality, it came off more like the teen sex comedies from the 80s, because you could have the fact that the neural pressure and just the fact that they're getting closer together, you can have it where it develops a relationship and sexual tension between them. That's one thing. But the things like when the Mako lady started doing the neural pressure, the sex dreams and stuff like that, it always felt a little bit too bad, like bad comedy, sex comedy, like Revenge of the Nerds, something like that. And so it always felt like they were becoming gratuitous again, and I never understood why they grafted it on like that.
Well, like the morning after they had their first official coitus, as Sheldon would say on Big Bang Theory. After they had done that, they had the conversation in the mess hall, and she told him that she was just wanting to explore human sexuality. Then she took the little furtive sip of the from the tea or the cup, and everybody's used that in their gifts and
Hey Charles, if we did like some shows where you just organically let a term come up and you name the episode, this would be the coitus podcast.
The coitus podcast.
I read an interesting quote that this may surprise you guys. I think that Jolene Blaylock does some of her best acting in the series, because she's demanded to do so much. There's the whole stuff with what's the name of the material that makes her start losing her control of her life?
Trillium D.
Yeah, the Trillium D, the whole thing with Trip, the whole thing with all this other stuff. Jolene Blaylock did not like the emotional T'Pol. She felt that they should have kept T'Pol more of what she considered to be a pure Vulcan, and she didn't like being asked to become more emotional. She didn't like the trip, the kissing, and some of the stuff where T'Pol lost her emotional control. I find that fascinating, because some people love what they asked her to do. She didn't want to do it on that level.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wish they hadn't continued on more than an episode or two, because they kept that going for a whole half season or so. And,
Right.
Yeah, I do like Trip and T'Pol. I mean, I agree with you. I always feel the same way about the Enterprise sexuality. It's like a 12-year-old wrote it, and that's from the beginning of Enterprise. When they're oohing and awing over the ladies eating butterflies. It just goes through the whole show.
Oh,
right. And it's. I mean, she could very easily have taught them Vulcan meditation techniques. They don't have to take off all their clothes and massage each other. But I mean, we know why they're doing that. But as the relationship, once it got to the point where it developed into a relationship, I really like them. I like their interplay. I think they're two of the best actors on the show. And T'Pol and Phlox are my two favorite Enterprise characters, with Trip as a number 3. So I think that they work well as a couple, and I think that as a relationship, even as a will they won't they, and I'm not even that big a fan of will they won't they's, but I think it works for these two, because one's an alien,
Well,
and
I think hating as much as I'm sorry. I was going to say I'm not hating it as much now that they're in sort of they still have the feelings, but they're not doing anything, and they're jealous, but they don't want to say they're jealous. I'm actually kind of liking this bit of it.
In season 4, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was what I was going to say, is that I like the way that it continued on into season 4. I think that, and you're going to see more developments in that as you get farther into the season. And I think that it was a really well developed relationship. It felt organic.
Well, I think the episode, the E squared, like where they see the future, I think that kind of helped them tone down some of the weird sexuality. But okay, so we may at some point have an actual real relationship where we have a child, and so maybe we ought to be kind of cool around each other and not be so weirdly awkward every time we bump into each other in the hallway. And actually,
stop stripping down and massaging your coworkers. That makes it weird.
And that quit doing that, and then like that all stopped. It was sort of like that episode was kind of like, oh, maybe we do like each other. Maybe we ought to quit, being awkward weird people. So That was
Right.
that was a good episode for them.
Yeah.
Before we lose time, what did y'all think about how the whole story arc ended? The end of the series, the season, and the end of the story. What did y'all think about that? The aftermath, I will tell you, I don't say I can't stand the aftermath. What
talking
happened?
about the Nazis? Or are we talking about the end of
God,
the
yes, I can't. Yeah, the aftermath with the Nazis, I can't stand. But I thought the ending was great. What did y'all think about the ending?
I forgot what the ending was.
Yeah, they made the bad guy ship go boom.
Well,
Yeah.
the fight scene between Archer and the reptilian leader was very satisfying, especially the way that fight ended.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it ends up. I mean, before even J.J. Abrams came along, there's a death ray, and there's a lot of gangplanks with no railings. They're jumping around and punching each other. And you know that they're doing the Star Wars thing, but that's fine.
Right.
It's a big epic ending to the thing, you know. Like,
Yeah.
but for the record, Discovery and J.J. Abrams didn't start that.
Yeah. So
Right.
did y'all find the ultimate the ending of the Xindi arc? Did you find it satisfying?
No.
I liked
Okay.
that they pulled the strings of the Xindi Council and managed to turn the Xindi against each other, and that was their
Yes.
weakness. That
Yes.
they already have all these animosities and distrusts among them. That's the way
Right.
to beat them, is to get them to start turning on each other. And I think that
Exactly.
works. That's the part of
And
it I
get
like.
rid of this fear builder
Mm-hmm.
ladies, the Guardian,
Right.
to get rid
Right.
of them too, because
Mhm.
it was because of them that everything was happening.
Well,
Right.
one little detail I'm confused about is at the end of it, right before the cliffhanger, they're in the Xindi ship. I think it's one of the aquatic ships and they're inside it, and they get, they go through the thing, and they come out and they're in Earth in the 1940s. Does that mean that Xindi ship was in the 1940s also?
When it exploded?
I think it blew up.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It blew up, and I think what they're saying is that all the forces blew the Enterprise back, but not the Xindi ship itself.
Okay, I missed that bit. Okay.
And then the whole Nazi, God, the whole Nazi thing. just didn't
It does. The Nazi thing does feel tacked on, especially the one in
Yeah.
the Nazi outfit. But the scene where they fly the shuttle pod down and World War II ships or planes start firing at them bullets, I think that sequence is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's very Tomorrow is Yesterday to me. I felt very Tomorrow is Yesterday.
Right.
Yeah,
Veronica, you said you didn't like it. How was that?
Because there wasn't really an ending. It just kind of like,
I kind of agree with that. I kind of feel like tacking on that alien Nazi thing robs the audience and the characters of any kind of like meaningful,
yes,
whatever you call it, resolution. I just felt like they were getting to a point where they could finally like, okay, it's all done. We have to like deal with the aftermath of all this stuff. Yank, rug comes out from under your feet, and here we have alien. I mean, and I know they felt like they needed after a season like they had just done, they needed a cliffhanger to get you into. But did it have to be that?
Yeah.
I
agree.
Well, after talking about Earth being in danger and saving Earth in every single episode for 24 episodes, you need to see Earth safe at the end.
You do. You absolutely do.
Yeah.
Right. The characters need to. The audience needs to. You need that sort of. You've held your breath for an entire season, and especially those last 4 episodes are so fast paced and so like gripping and so intense that you just need that exhale.
You're right, Alan, because I think about the whole thing. Remember that when the Enterprise crew agreed to destroy one of the spheres, and the crew is literally almost dying, their skin peeling because they're in that space, and Phlox is trying to hold them together. And then Hoshi, who other than Travis was the most underused character on the show, they brought her more into the show, made her stronger, needed her genius to help decode the code for the weapon. And I agree with y'all, because even though it's an incredibly cliched scene, it was an exciting scene when Archer's running down the catwalk in slow motion. I mean, oh my God, you've seen that a million times, but it was so cool. And I was like, oh my God. And then they thought he died. And of course we knew he didn't die, but it was, I agree with you, Al, it would have been great if they had explored that. And then next thing you got Nazis. It's such a letdown, but up until that point, it was awesome.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
One quick thing I'll say, and I'm done, is quickly, I love the fact that y'all are talking about the insectoid. I love the fact when the insectoid toward the end was kind of like, hey, wait a minute. And he starts questioning the reptilian general. He just blows the ship out of the sky because he's really
Right.
evil.
Yeah.
Oh, that was such a good season.
Yeah.
I love how badly the Enterprise got damaged those last few episodes. You really got to feel that ship was hanging together by a thread. There were they go in rooms, and the rooms would have girders hanging down. There was inoperative. I mean, you could tell the disruption to their routine. You could tell just how bad a shape they were in.
Right. Exactly.
Only Voyager Year Hell has come close to that.
That's what I was gonna say. And then they did the magic erase button at the end.
Yes.
That's what Voyager should have been. For 7 years, that ship should have gotten more and more damaged and more like unusable.
Right.
Not suddenly, but gradually over those 7 years, where you have to have makeshift repairs and you have to do whatever you have to do. And they just didn't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, that's a different subject.
So overall, positive or negative on third season?
I think I enjoyed the watch. I don't think it's
okay.
It's still my least favorite Star Trek series. I think this is probably, this season is probably the most conservative Star Trek season. You've got the white guys up front, and the minority characters barely have speaking roles. And it's very like pro-Bush war on terror. I mean, I think when people complain about Star Trek being woke and people say, well, it's always been woke, where have you been? Well, they've been watching Enterprise season 3.
Okay. What about you, Alan? Same thing? You feel the same?
I still 100% love it.
How about you, Elaine?
I enjoyed it, yeah.
And you, Matt?
Yeah, it's my favorite season so far, and halfway through four's got to make up a lot to equal season 3. I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you seen 4 before, Matt?
No, this is entirely new for me for 4.
Ooh,
okay,
exciting.
Yeah,
nice. I do want to say that I do like that season 4 begins with this whole new like era of xenophobia on Earth, because they've just been through an attack,
right?
And it's so I like that there was some cultural carryover from there was an effect that was felt from the attack.
Very much
that was smartly done.
Very impressive.
Very post 9/11 America, really.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, true. That's true.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Elaine, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on Facebook and Twitter, and monkeying around.
How about you,
on
Matt?
Twitter at monkeying around, on Facebook at monkeying around, and monkeying around podcast@gmail.com.
And how about you, Matt?
Very active on Facebook. On the I sometimes could write stuff on Earth Station Trek. Also, anybody who listens and wants to send me a friend request, as long as you're not a bot, I'll accept it. And you can follow Elaine and me as we watch through the episodes live as we watch them.
Right on. Awesome. Hey, Matt, are you going to do your ranking of original series season 2 sometime soon?
Well, we have to watch it first.
You're going to do your rewatch of that? Okay.
Yeah, as soon as we finish Enterprise, we're going to go back into Star Trek, and we're going to hit up season 2 pretty quick. So, yeah.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Awesome. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll have a couple of, we're going to appearances, basically. Like next Thursday, we won't be going live, but we will have our crossover beginning with the Cosmic Pizza podcast on February the 3rd. Hey. Our podcast episode will air where we had a long and good talk with the Cosmic Pizza crew. That's a lot of words to get out about the Doctors of Star Trek. I thought we had a great conversation. I believe they're planning to release their end of a conversation we had with them about possibilities of extraterrestrial life in the universe on February the 8th. And then the following Thursday will be on it's February the 7th. I'm trying to keep track of all my dates. We'll be on the Captain Picard Week Podcast Festival. So that'll be at 7 p.m. We'll be going live on Thursday, February the 7th. And am I getting the date wrong? February the 9th. That's Thursday, February the 9th. We'll be going live for the Captain Picard Week Podcast Festival. And that'll be on the Strange New Pod YouTube and feeds. So we'll be posting links and reminders and all that. I wanted to mention it now, though, so that no live stream next week, but we will have a podcast episode on Friday, February the 3rd for you to look forward to.
Right on.
All right, Al, where can people find more of you?
Well, I have another podcast called Modern Musicology, where we talk about all kinds of different music topics. We have done Beatles shows and shows about metal and shows about the best and worst second albums ever and all kinds of stuff. So join in on that. It's a lot of fun. And you can go to cosmicpress.com, KOZMIC press.com to see everything else.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
And?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys with Elaine Sweatman.
Awesome.
And do you have a closing for us this week?
No.
Oh,
Every time you come to that question and then it's dead silence.
I know that moment of anticipation that usually comes through.
Woo, baby.
All right. Bye.
I guess that's it. See y'all later.
Bye.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.